it's okay, I'll just go through those as efficiently as possible. I'm really glad, particularly for those first two, as you said, I think you used the word intriguing, which it is, and it's instructive as well. The intriguing request that you have from the current Israeli government, although they didn't actually come up with it themselves, for the Palestinian side, and in the context of the negotiations, to quote-unquote recognise Israel as a Jewish state. Now Abbas, for what it's worth, his only response to this, publicly at least, is, well, it's not for me to decide what you define yourself as. Okay, now, alright, that's okay so far as it goes, but we might not be surprised to know that a critique of that demand isn't fully explained by someone like Abu Mazen. Now, if we look at this idea of Israel as a Jewish state, what are we talking about here? And you start to see some of the unique elements that exist within in the Israeli context. When it comes to the Palestinians, why would they object to recognising Israel as a Jewish state? For the Palestinians, that's objectionable, because what it is asking them to do is to recognise and affirm their own dispossession. And despite of all the things and all the horrors that were visited, for example, upon the Native Americans in what became the USA, nobody ever asked the Native Americans to affirm and applaud their own ethnic cleansing and expulsions. But that is what the demand for Palestinians to recognise Israel as a Jewish state is doing. Now, what does, for example, if the Palestinian leadership representing the PA recognised Israel as a Jewish state? Well, what does that mean for the Palestinians living inside Israel? What does that mean for the Palestinian refugees? See, Israel maintaining itself as a Jewish state and trying to pretend that a Jewish democratic state is a plausible idea has to mean, necessarily means, the domination of the Palestinians inside the state of Israel and the continued expulsion, the continued dispossession of the refugees too. So you're right in saying it's an intriguing demand, and in a sense it's a bit foolish for them to even raise it as an issue, because it can open a Pandora's box that I wish hasn't been opened. The second one, which is related in some senses, is, and I think the way you introduced it was something that you read or heard, which was talking about the way in which practical measures taken by Israel in the occupied territories, particularly the West Bank of course, has meant that a two-state solution isn't possible, and therefore the idea of a one-state is becoming a much more discussed issue. Now this comes up time and time again these days in talks and discussion forums and websites in a way that is inconceivable to have been happening even 5 years ago, to do with the one-state solution. If you remember that map right at the end of or almost near the end of that sequence, you can see here what the gentleman was referring to, in the sense that, as I pointed out at the time, it's impossible to create a sovereign entity in this, never mind the disconnection that Israel has deliberately implemented, separating the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, which according to the Oslo Accords, in theory, are meant to be one single territorial unit. Now what's happened since 1967 to 2010 is that Israel, by its own policies, have created a de facto one state. There isn't another authority in the area from the river to the sea, right? If you want to visit Bethlehem, you need to go through Israeli military border control at some point, right? There is only one state in that sense. There's one territorial unit. And the opponents of the one-state idea, for a long time, apart from other much more profound reasons to do with Zionism, but one of the objections to it has been that it's apparently impractical. I would say that the onus is on the proponents of the two-state solution to give evidence for why that is practical, given the realities on the ground. And of course it's not just the realities on the ground, because the first point makes us remember that we're not just talking about the occupied territories, we're also talking about what's happening in the pre-67 borders and the refugees. And if there's one thing that I'd like you to take away from the kind of the slightly rushed run we took through these different policies that Israel's been implementing towards Palestinians for over 60 years, if there's one thing I want you to take away, is the consistency and the parallels between the policies in these different areas. Okay? The fact that there are these patterns, whether you're talking about Palestinians in the Nakab in the south, or Palestinians in Silwan in East Jerusalem, or Palestinians in the Jordan Valley in the West Bank, Israel's essential policy aims are the same. maximum amount of land, minimum number of Palestinians, maximum amount of Palestinians on the minimum amount of land. And those are the strategic principles that are guiding Israeli policy from Haifa and Nazareth down to Ramallah. Okay, that is the game, and that has created this de facto one state. And so the question is, what kind of state will that be? One based on domination and subjugation, or one based on equality and justice? And just quickly on the issue of the settlements, the justification that is offered, and you're right, sometimes because there was no state of Palestine before, so in what sense are they there illegally, etc. The illegality of the settlements is purely based on the 4th Geneva Convention, and that is the position, that is why the settlements are considered illegal by all those bodies that I mentioned before, as well as others. Right, the fact that it's illegal to transfer your own civilian population to areas that are under military occupation, and that is the basis of the illegality of the settlements. Before, of course, you look into other areas like the confiscation of private property and other such human rights issues. But that is the basis of the. And so, if you heard that from somebody, that could be what you say to them. And thanks very much as well for the comments.
Okay, more hands, please.